Two Sunday games will round out round 19 of the NBL, leading us into the final game week next week, where everything will be decided. Still don't know who's going to finish first. We still don't know who's going to finish sixth. The NBL season is absolutely cracking and as tight as ever. Now, before we get into Sunday's games, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and don't forget to comment on what you think is going to happen in Sunday's NBL games. Now, let's start off with Sydney versus Perth. Really tough game. Going to decide it's 3 versus 4. This matchup probably will decide who will have the home court advantage through the play-in and could even potentially move one of these teams into the top 2. So a lot on the line. Now, where it actually breaks down, the biggest stat in this one for me is how Perth play when they are playing on the road in the second leg of a double-header weekend. They have gone 1-4 this season when they've played at home and then have to play their second game on the road, meaning they struggle with their recovery, struggle with their focus and their energy levels in that second game. Also, to make things even worse, Sydney have had 8 full days off since their last game, which was played last week on Friday, where they lost to the Adelaide 36ers. So they've had a long time to think about what they did wrong, and they will get back on track against Perth, who have struggled in these situations in NBL 25. Now, look, this game is actually set to be a fairly low-scoring game, I believe. Neither team has scored over 90 points in both of their games that they've played against each other this season. I expect Sydney to really lock down defensively. They have struggled to score points. Sydney should ultimately have one of the best offenses in the league, but they do not. They lean heavily on their defense. They will obviously be focusing on shutting down Bryce Cotton, and I believe this game will hang in the balance on Perth's satellite scorers in Dylan Windler and Benny Henschel, and even Doolittle and Pinder. However, Doolittle and Pinder can be shut down in this game, especially with Sydney defending so well in the paint this season, actually ranked first in the league in opposition points in the paint. So expect Sydney to cover the 2.5 points in this one, and even though the game total is at 192.5, I still expect this one to hit the under. Now, game 2, S.E Melbourne hosting Adelaide. Both of these teams had a loss on Friday night. S.E Melbourne went down to Perth after having a 12-point lead, and Adelaide really gave up their biggest opportunity to lock in a play-in spot, losing to Brisbane in probably their easiest game in the run home over these last two rounds, where they really were desperate for a win. So they're going to be coming into this matchup a bit disappointed, but this is a very tough matchup for them against the Phoenix. Look, the Phoenix love playing in Melbourne, and they've struggled on the road just as they did in Perth in the end. But they've won actually 9 of their past 10 games when played in Melbourne. So they're coming up against Adelaide, who, have obviously the firepower to beat anybody, but they're really struggling with their depth at the moment. Adelaide have basically only played 7 players in their last 5 or 6 matches, but relied very heavily on their starters in their match against Brisbane and ultimately suffered down the stretch. So where in contrast, S.E Melbourne actually had 7 players score in double digits in their loss to Perth. So S.E Melbourne have the depth. They have a high-powered offense that can score from anywhere on the court. And they're coming up against Adelaide, who rely heavily on the efficiency of Kendrick Davis and Dejan Vasiljevic, which was missing against Brisbane despite playing at home. So in this one, big, tough task for Adelaide, I believe. Expect S.E Melbourne to cover the 2.5 points as the favourite. This one does have huge potential with both teams being able to score on their day. So I like the over in this. And I also even like Geordie Hunter to record 8+ rebounds. Now, he's done this in 4 of his past 5 games and has actually averaged 10 rebounds in his past 5 games. He's had 2 huge games during that period as well, where he's had 18 rebounds and 13 rebounds. So it looks like that is Geordie Hunter's role. He plugs himself under the rim and makes sure that they do not give up any second chance points. So look for Geordie Hunter to go 8+ rebounds in this one at fairly decent odds as well. So they're your tips for Sunday's NBL action. Don't forget to gamble responsibly and happy punting.